This is a course on training of trainers regarding employment and specifically on the topic of communication and active listening. This is in the framework of the European program PAL, Fighting Discrimination and Anti-Gypsyism in Education and Employment in the European Union. The first topic to look at is the importance of communication, and more specifically, what does communication mean? In this sense, we can define that communication usually means speaking to each other, and with the word communication, most people mean speech. In fact, the speech is only a part of the communication, and in many cases, the least significant part. Moreover, communication is the exchange of messages between two or more people through which a relationship is developed. If we invoke our experiences as a student, then we can ask ourselves, how many times have we felt that we have not been understood or were ignored, and just lost our desire in learning and didn't adopt a negative attitude towards the one that was considered responsible? So, this is an extremely crucial issue of interpersonal communication. It involves the transferring of information from one person to another by using verbal and non-verbal means, information that may relate to desires, feelings, ideas, views, opinions, and facts. How does communication take place? Regarding the way in which communication occurs, it is widespread the following concept. A person, called the sender, wants to send a message to another one, called the receiver. The sender encodes the message, giving it by using the appropriate words, gestures, expressions, and communicating, sharing, or announcing it to the receiver. The last one, the receiver, receives the message and interprets it according to his or her perceptions. If all this is done clearly, without mistakes, without pitfalls and risks, or tricks, then effective communication is achieved. This is the Shannon-Weaver model of communication on the screen. What is the meaning of the term effective communication? Communication, as we can see, is a complex process which includes the sender, and then on the other end is the receiver, which either understands what eventually is perceived or what the receiver would perceive without any distortions. The difference between these two concepts is the divergence which occurs when communicating a message between a sender and a receiver. Effective communication means that we hear well and interpret the message of the other person exactly as that person meant it. Now we understand that communication is a complex process consisting of mutually inter-affective elements. What are the elements of successful communication? At first is the clarity and completeness of messages. The first element, which is crucial for successful communication, is the degree of clarity and completeness that characterizes the message sent by the sender. Many times we send a message through a short phrase or use words or winks which are susceptible to many interpretations or transfer only part of the intended information. The sender must use simple language, and each sentence structure in composing the message must be an easy type of sentence. When there is clarity in presenting ideas, it's easy for the receiver to grasp the meaning being conveyed by the sender. Verbal and non-verbal messages are also elements of successful communication. We communicate many of our thoughts and feelings through words and phrases. Often, messages are transmitted through non-verbal forms. The non-verbal messages usually accompany the verbal ones, like winks, posture, movement, and placement in space or in connection with the interlocutor, gaze, facial expression, gestures, tone of voice, speech and breathing rate, etc. The body language serves to transmit clear messages, for example, the traffic policeman movements, or to denote a status, that is, cross of hands in the prayer position, or to indicate a mental state, for example, blushing. It is estimated that most of the communication takes place through non-verbal messages. The non-verbal messages usually accompany the verbal ones and are as an inseparable whole with them. We cannot separate the words we use to transmit images or sounds and movements. The non-verbal messages, except the fact that they have a high frequency, can affect the receiver deeper than the words or arguments. Research from Mehradian and Winner showed that communication is based only on 7% on words, 38% on the tone of voice, and 55% of body language. What does the perception of reality system messages really is? This is another part of elements of successful communication. Communication is a fact that nobody understands reality with a completely objective way. We all interpret the stimuli, the messages we receive, differently. So we can say that the meaning of a message is given not by the content itself, but by the person who receives it. This is the usual cause of misunderstandings. The words or phrases we all hear at the time from the same speaker do not have the same meaning or the same appeal to everyone. The same can happen with a visual stimulus. For example, look at a picture. If you show the same picture to some of your friends, a number of them may express a different content than which you assign. All this suggests a highly important element of communication. Each of us has a system of concepts under which we understand reality. This system is based on our previous experiences, being personal, social, or professional, in our education, and in the broader knowledge we acquire, and on our current mood, needs, and expectations. In this way, each one finds his balance within a complex reality which surrounds him, which otherwise would turn into a chaos. However, we often become captives of that system. To avoid having to revise our balance mechanisms, we try, either consciously or unconsciously, to maintain the perception system that we developed, in spite of events or experiences that are opposed to it. We tend to ignore the information colliding with it. We emphasize other information because it fits into the system. In other words, we create a defense mechanism in order to defend ourselves and the way we interpret reality, though these our established conceptions are stable and appear to be confirmed. Behavior causes behavior. The context of communication. As a context, we mean the area, location of communication in which the communication takes place. It is, for example, our relationship with a person which is different at a banquet one night and at the office the next morning. Second, the time of communication. How much time do we have to perceive the message? The same person reacts differently in the same message depending on the time it has to deal with it. Third is the situation, the circumstances, or the mood in which the communication takes place. Fourth is the presence of others. A person may react differently if he is being criticized in private or in front of another person. Naturally, it is important who the other person is, how many are the other persons, what relations does he have with the other persons. The events that have previously occurred between the sender and the receiver and the previous relationship also play an important role. A message is a co-product formed by both of them and contains all previous information of the relationship. The meaning of a dialogue is the result of interaction between the messages sent on both sides and the way these messages were perceived. Each message is at the same time a cause and an effect of the behavior of both the sender and the receiver. If we do not maintain some distance from our system of perceptions, it is hard to receive the message correctly. The importance of feelings. The content of a message consists of thoughts and feelings. Thoughts are products of cognitive functions and may be perceptions, ideas, arguments, memories, and visions. We formulate our thoughts in response to what we see, hear, touch, smell, or feel. Feelings are the emotional reactions of our inner world towards our own thoughts and actions, or those of others, or even towards events and external stimuli. Usually, we speak and react by thoughts rather than emotions. Feelings are very personal and more common to be overlooked, especially in the professional field. But no matter how much we try to convince ourselves that we have no feelings for a given situation, feelings are seriously affecting every communicative relationship. The two levels of messages. Each message operates, first, at the level of the information transmitted by the sender and perceived by the receiver on the opinions, emotions, experiences of the sender. Second, at the level of the relationship between sender and receiver, and expresses hidden but more or less clear elements. For example, what is being carried on between communicating part, what is the balance of power, etc. Self-esteem and mutual respect. The person who considers his own positive aspects and activities and deals creatively with his own shortcomings is more likely to have the courage to admit the corresponding elements of the other in order to form an honest and creative relationship with him. Self-esteem is a prerequisite or a background for any relationship. Active listening. Is active listening an effective communication technique? A French proverb says, "I do not know what I said before hearing the answer to what I had said." Active listening means to try to really understand, giving time and space for discussion. Active listening requires a verbal interaction with the speaker and is always based on the careful monitoring of what he says. The term active implies that the sender is interested to determine whether the messages were perceived without being understood. Therefore, the sender takes care not to send messages constantly, but often to ask the receiver's reaction in order to ensure that their communication is on the same wavelength and there are no unresolved points. On the receiver side, he is patiently listening to the sender, explores the content of the messages received, listens with interest and understanding, not necessarily agreeing, poses clarifying questions, such as, if I understand correctly, what do you mean? Want to give an example, etc., which certainly help to achieve this goal. Finally, hearing or listening is wondering about the meaning the sender is trying to convey. This requires constant focusing on the meaning, feelings, or motivation behind the words, and then responding not only to the content of the words, but to the feelings too. The real message the sender wants to transmit to the speaker is usually hidden in the deeper meaning of the words used. Let's ask ourselves the question, how well do we listen? Are we good listeners? How well do we focus on others when they speak? It is easy to understand that although we know how to listen, this does not mean that we do it well enough every time. These findings are reflected in the following ranking of listening modes. The 8 levels of listening. Number 1, do not listen. Number 2, pretend that you listen. Number 3, listen partially, in fragments. Number 4, I listen, but at intervals. Number 5, I listen selectively. Number 6, I listen passively. Number 7, I listen actively. And number 8, I listen to understand. Most of us use one or more of the 8 different levels of listening, depending on the time and circumstances, such as our mood, our stress levels, our priorities, and on how much interested we are in the other person. Our listening skills do not change from day to day, but what is changing is how we use them. What are the 10 skills for active listening techniques which are needed for effective communication? First is attending. Respond in a way which shows that you keep track with the flow of speech. Provide verbal or non-verbal awareness of the other person. The speaker must feel that is heard by the listener. Slightly shake your head to say yes, raise your eyebrows and say words like true listening. Oh, this is interesting sometimes. Second, maintain eye contact with the speaker to the extent that everyone can feel comfortably. The direct eye contact with the speaker, which should not be persistent or aggressive, but indicative of the openness and invitation to the speaker to express himself. Sit directly opposite the speaker with your body slightly forward so that you show him with body language that you pay attention to him. Avoid crossing your hands as showing close to oneself or in judgmental mood. Number 3, summarizing. Occasional review or summary of what has been said so far helps to follow the debate. Respond in a way that shows that you keep track with the flow of speech. 4. Prodding. Question the speaker in a supportive way to request more information or clear up any confusion. Ask for more information by clarifying open questions, but do not stop the thoughts of the speaker. Ask when he is finished. For example, what happened next? What did he say? Etc. Number 5, limit external stimuli that can distract the person who speaks. Turn off the cell phone. Leave aside the documents and ask the co-speaker to do the same. Avoid looking at your watch or at other people, or undertake different activities. Number 6, restating, paraphrases. Repeat with different phrases the word of the speaker to make sure you understood correctly. Number 7, concentrate your attention only on what you hear, without making guesses about what the speaker thinks. Most people listen in order to respond, which orients them more to think about their own answer rather than the words of the speaker. If you are confused and you do not understand, say openly to the speaker that you do not understand and ask him to explain it in another way, instead of starting to guess. Number 8, being quiet. Learn to stay silent for a while in order to understand all viewpoints when there are pauses in normal speech flow. Give the speaker time to think and talk. Number 9, limit your impulse to immediately answer all questions. Avoid the rush to tell the speaker how you handle a similar situation. Many times, the only thing the other man wants is simply to talk about what concerns themselves. Number 10, before you decide whether you disagree or not, wait for the speaker to complete his thoughts so you can understand what he or she is really saying. Listen with empathy. Listen in order to acknowledge and understand the position, the feelings, the motives of the other person. This does not mean that you accept his views, but it means simply that you give full attention to understand his position. What are the rules of a good listener? Encouragement, show to him that you do really listen. Clarification, make questions to confirm what the speaker has said. Recast, show that you actually listen and help to check out events and meanings. Reflection of the emotions. When the emotions become a mirror, they reflect what we have inside. Summary. Re-express the main ideas, the themes and feelings expressed by the speaker. This provides an overview and a basis from which to continue the dialogue. Ratification. Show appreciation for the efforts of the speaker. A good rule of thumb to us when we listen is listen twice as much as we talk. Moreover, what are the rules that a good listener never does? Interruption. Good communication is not possible when people are stopped before telling what they have to say. Contempt. A classic form of contempt is simply not paying any attention. Sarcasm. Sarcasm can simply put an end to any communication. Insults or mockery. People experiencing conflicts often resort to the tactic of insulting or mocking the other person. Personal attacks raise the level of hostility and increase the chances of violence. Moreover, Generalization. This is a generalization of a person's behavior. Review. In a conversation, a person often arbitrarily assumes the right to decide if others are right or wrong, whether it is good or bad, and denotes it. Accusations. In order to communicate and solve problems, it is important to get away from the idea that one needs to be blamed. Statement of opinion as a fact. It is more than annoying to hear someone declare an opinion as if it is the absolute truth.